One, two, three, four. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Colonial Williamsburg's music sessions. I'm Wayne.
And I'm Stephen.
We're going to play a few tunes for you today and start with a song here in a bit. We'll unpack a tune for you titled Greensleeves. It's one you may be familiar with. We have the music available as a PDF on the link there. And if you have any questions, please keep those in mind as we move forward. Thanks again for joining us. And we're going to do a song that Stephen's going to talk a little bit about.
This is a well-known song from the period, folks, called One Misty, Moisty Morning, and it's based on a song from the period called The Wiltshire Wedding. And that song was originally published in a publication from the period called Wit and Mirth, or Pills to Purge Melancholy. For this song, I want you all to sing along with us. The chorus just goes, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? I think you got that. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. One misty, moisty morning, when cloudy was the weather, met with an old man. He was clothed in all in leather. He wore no shirt upon his back, but wool unto his skin, singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again. I went a little further, and there I met a maid. She's going a-milking, well a-milking, so she said. And I began to compliment. She began to sing, singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again. This maid, her name was Dolly, clothed in a gown of gray, and feeling somewhat jolly, I persuaded her to stay. And in many kind embraces, I stroked her double chin, singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again. I said that I would married be, and you will be my bride. Long we would not tarry, nor 20 things besides. I'll plow and sow and reap and mow. You shall sit and spin, singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again. Her parents, they consented, all parties were agreed. Her portion 30 shillings, we married were with speed. And with a piper he did play, while others danced and sang, singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again. Singing, how to do, and how to do, and how to do again.
I'm going to do a tune now that was first published in the 17th century. It's a typical example of the types of tunes published at that time that were still being enjoyed here in the colonies and here in Virginia during the 18th century. It's known as In the Fields of Frost and Snow. If that sounds familiar, it's a tune that we did with guitar not long ago, but we've had several requests to do some of the tunes that we've done thus far, but with fiddle or violin and guitar. So this is In the Fields of Frost and Snow.
Well, next we have an instrument here, folks, that you often will see these in the colonial period, played by many folks, often working folks, enslaved persons played this instrument called a Jews harp. And this is a French word, by the way, that means jaw. So Jews is a French word meaning jaw. So often referred to as a jaw harp. It's had many different names throughout history, but it originates from originally from Egypt, dating back several thousand years, approximately 5,000 years ago is when it was invented. And it was first brought over here to the colonies before we were even colonies to Jamestown in 1607, and was pretty popular in the 18th century as a traveling instrument. So you imagine you take this thing right out of your pocket and you take it out and you just start to play a tune. So I'm going to do that right now. And this is a well-known tune. I think you'll recognize what trip to Williamsburg would be complete without it. This is called Yankee Doodle. So here we go. So the way you play it is you just take your Jews harp and you strike it with your forefinger. And you notice when I strike it here, I don't get any sound at all, because the sound isn't really coming from the instrument itself. It's really coming from my mouth. So my mouth almost forms the shape of like a sound chamber, like with the Spanish guitar here. So it's when I place it against my two rows of teeth that you actually get sound. And then when you inhale and exhale, it really projects the sound. But you're probably wondering, how do you get those different tones? You get that by really emulating a bullfrog. So I've spent a lot of time watching bullfrogs, and long story, if you watch a bullfrog, you'll notice that as their throat expands, the note gets lower. So same thing here. And then as the throat shrinks, the note gets higher. That's your quick Jews harp lesson.
I'm going to segue into a guitar lesson. Stephen and I are part of a program that's coming up that we'll be doing as soon as we reopen. We're members of the Joke Broke Theater Company here at Colonial Williamsburg, and we do a lot of programs out at the Play Booth stage out near the Palace. And one of the programs that we have coming up is titled Highland Jubilee. We recently posted a video of a small version of that, kind of a teaser, if you will, or a bit of a trailer for that program. If you want to look on Colonial Williamsburg's website for that, it's fun. And one of the tunes that permeates Virginia's musical life during the 18th century in particular is Greensleeves, and we've talked a little bit about this tune along the way with its inclusion in the Beggar's Opera, but we wanted to teach you how to play that today. We're going to play through it for you. And if you're familiar with the Christmas carol from the 19th century titled What Child Is This?, you may not know this tune as Greensleeves, but you may recognize it from its use in that very well-known Christmas carol. But this is Greensleeves, and please note that Stephen will be playing a very involved finger-style version that he arranged. I'm playing the basic melody, and the melody that I'm playing will match up to the PDF that we made available to you. Here we go. I'll start it. And B.
So we're going to start our A part here, folks. For that, you're just going to take your ring finger, or your third finger, we call it, and you're going to place it right here on your third string. We're going to start there.
So here we go. One, play. And I'll unpack the B section for you. That's this part where you have the, so here we go. 3 beats of nothing. 1, ready, G. 2, 3. So we'll play that all the way through, just one time through the complete song again. And speaking of Christmas time, Stephen and I are a part of the Jugbroke Theater Company, as I mentioned before. But within the Jugbroke Theater Company, we perform as an ensemble from time to time, representing a historically plausible family from the 18th century here in Virginia known as the Waterman Family. And we have a fun program coming up known as Summer in the Valley that we'll be doing once we reopen this summer. But we also have a Christmas in the Valley program, and we do both of those programs at the Hennage Auditorium, and we do some other programming as the Waterman Family from time to time. And it's just a lot of fun, lots of fun songs, stories. It's all in first person when we do that. And it's something I encourage you to attend if you have an opportunity. So this is Greensleeves one more time all the way through. B section. And that's the entire tune, and that tune was very well known here in Virginia during the 18th century. It was used in a ballad opera that I've mentioned several times, known as the Beggar's Opera, performed right here at Williamsburg in 1768. It was performed other years, but that was one year of note for the Beggar's Opera here at Williamsburg. And we're going to move on now to a tune titled None Such that Stephen's going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to switch back over to the fiddle, or violin.
Yeah, so None Such is, the title refers to a couple things. It refers to a thing without parallel. So to put that in a proper sentence, there is none such greater than this guitar. So a thing without parallel. And it also, some say, as reading about the title, that it's referring to King Henry VIII's hunting lodge, which is also called the None Such or None Such. So that's quite possible.
1, 2, 3, 4. So you may have noticed that we're doing a few tunes in a minor key or in minor keys, sort of a minor mode. Minor keys tend to be a little less, I'm not sure happy is the right word, but a little less exuberant from time to time. And they, for me, tend to be much more reflective. And we're happy to be able to do what we do here. We love music and we love history very much, and we very much appreciate all of the service personnel around the world and all that you do and all that the service personnel have done for many, many years throughout this nation's history. And we just want to wish you a happy Memorial Day. And so we're playing some lower key things for that. But thank you so much for everything that you do. We're very appreciative of it, Stephen and I. And we're going to do a tune now that is especially meaningful to a lot of service personnel that I've met over the many years I've had the good fortune to work here. And it's a tune titled Over the Hills and Far Away. And we thought it was a fitting tune. This tune has been used for all sorts of purposes, love songs, and there are many martial settings of this tune. A friend and author of mine, he particularly likes this song a lot. I won't mention his name, but I'm sure he knows who he is. Thanks for an awesome book titled Dunmore's War. And so we wanted to, he was an infantryman, but this is known as Over the Hills and Far Away. And without further ado, here it is. And this is another tune that was used in the Beggar's Opera that we mentioned. And we thought it would also be fitting to include this with the violin and guitar. The first tune that we taught weeks and weeks ago now was, as you may recall, Over the Hills and Far Away. So we're back home again. So if we have any questions, we'll be happy to take those at this time. Thanks again for joining us today.
We had a question earlier from Denise. She asked if you could play us something from the Beggar's Opera, and we've already done that twice over for her today. But if you might be able to tell us a little bit more about that particular show and maybe why it was so popular here in Williamsburg.
Yeah, absolutely. Denise, as he pointed out, the tune Greensleeves was used in the Beggar's Opera, Over the Hills and Far Away. As I mentioned, there are many other well-known tunes that, or I should say tunes that are well-known to people interested in music from this period. For example, the tune Lily Bolero is used in the Beggar's Opera, and that's the same melody used for the song Nottingham Ale, and the list goes on and on and on. There are, I can't remember off the top of my head, 60 or 70 different, they're known as airs in that piece, and a lot of the tunes that were used in the Beggar's Opera were well-known tunes, including the melodies I just mentioned. And John Gay, the composer who put that together, who wrote the piece, pulled those tunes together, and he had another musician do the score for it. It's known as figured bass, basically taking the melody and adding a bass part to give it a little, some accompaniment, basically, if you want to think of it as in terms of background guitar chords, that's outside of the scope of this conversation. But John Gay put all these tunes together, built a story around it, and so when audiences attended this particular ballad opera and other ballad operas like it, they were already familiar with the melodies, so the audience was already predisposed to, or really they knew what they were getting into. A lot of times they knew they would know a lot of the tunes, and they would hear the story unfold with well-known melodies, and that's one of the reasons it really resonated so well. And the Beggar's Opera, as I mentioned a few times over the last few weeks, was quite popular here and in England during the 18th century. Thank you.
We have one other question asking if you might tell us a little bit about the other instruments. You already described the jaw harp, but the other instruments that you played today.
Sure. Well, you want to?
Yes, absolutely. I'm playing a Spanish guitar here. This is related to your modern guitar, your modern folk guitar, even your modern classic guitar, except it is smaller. So if you notice, it's quite small. And some of the other structural differences is that you have friction pegs right up here instead of gears or machine heads that you have on your modern guitars. You also have these frets that go all the way up to the sound hole. Now, this very specific Spanish guitar was made right here in Colonial, Williamsburg several years ago. And it's often referred to as a Spanish guitar to differentiate it from other kinds of guitars that were popular in the period, without wanting to get into it too much, but Baroque guitars, English guitars. But again, this is tuned and played just like your modern guitar.
Right, and this is the violin or the fiddle. The terms violin and fiddle are used interchangeably to this day. This particular violin, as Stephen's guitar was, this violin was made here. Both of these instruments were made not far from where we are right now, over at the cabinet maker's shop. And Leopold Mozart, Amadeus's father, played the violin. Mozart played the violin. He's very well known as a keyboard player, but he, according to his dad, was a better violinist than he was even as a keyboardist. And Jefferson played the violin. Many people of all classes of society here, there were many enslaved persons here in Virginia that played violin for many of the dances and other music functions that were happening here in Virginia. So it was a very, very popular instrument during the 18th century. And this violin is very typical of the type of violin they were using during the 18th century, using gut strings, for example, and so on. And the guitar that I was playing earlier, I'll show you briefly. This is a modern, just a standard modern classical guitar, sometimes called a classic guitar. And it has quite a few differences, to say the least, from Stephen's guitar, but it's tuned the same way. And that's a fascinating subject in and of itself, the evolution of guitars. But thanks so much for the question. And again, everyone, we appreciate you joining us. And
thank you.
We'd like to send a little note out where we have our friend Luke in mind today. We're going to play a tune that I believe he likes. And here at Colonial Williamsburg, one of the many things I love about it is we have the most adorable squirrels, but I always refer to them as lawn porpoises, because they look like little porpoises going through the lawn. And anyway, so this tune is titled Hunt the Squirrel. Please don't hunt our squirrels here or our lawn porpoises, but we're going to play this tune for our buddy Luke, and we hope he's doing okay. So thanks a lot for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3, 4.